This is the Horse Radio Network. This is episode 27 of the Stable Scoop radio show on the Horse Radio Network. Horse Husbands, a 12-step program. This episode of Stable Scoop comes with a warning. It consists of 4 horse husbands sitting around talking about what it's like to be married to horsewomen. If you are a horsewoman, consider yourself warned. This is a testosterone-filled zone. On the other hand, if you are a horse husband, sit back with an adult beverage and enjoy.
Welcome to the Stable Scoop, with weekly shows delivered right to you. With Helena and Glenn the Geek, live from the stable, it's every week. They'll bring you the news through hail or high water, while using their tails as their own fly swatters. So sit on down and laugh till you poop, 'cause it's time again for the Stable Scoop. Stable Scoop. The Stable Scoop. Stable Scoop.
My name is Glenn the Geek, and I have been a horse husband for over 20 years.
My name is Jeff Wells, and I've been a veterinarian doing mostly equine practice for 21 years.
My name is John McGraw, and I've been a horse husband and a horse father for over 21 years and am still trying to survive it.
I'm Greg Tryon. I've been a horse husband over 13 years and dated 4 years prior to that, so I should have learned something.
Should have figured it out then.
Yep. Yeah, you had 4 years to bail out. I don't know what your excuse is, Greg. Hey, welcome everybody to the Horse Husbands episode of the Stable Scoop radio show. Before we learn a little about the horse husbands that are with us tonight, I want to read a poem that I found that I think really sets the stage for this show. And obviously you can tell that Helena, my co-host, is not here with us today. This was basically a no women allowed show. This is all just horse husbands talking about what it's like to be married to horse women. And I think Jeff also, as a veterinarian and who wrote a book on horse husbands, will be able to give us some unique insight as well at the dealing with horse husbands on veterinary calls, which should be interesting. But the reason we're doing this show is it sort of follows up our Valentine's episode last week where we talked about dating and all of that. And then next week, our wives are going to be on talking about us. So next week, they'll be able to get their revenge. I thought about that after and thought it would have been better for us to go last, I think.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, guys, listen to this poem, and it just describes everything that we live. It's called A Horse Husband's Lament. And here it goes. My wife, she has a quarter horse with flaxen mane and tail. She thinks he is the finest thing that ever jogged a rail. She calls him Dandy Darling, and if the truth I tell, that fancy pampered quarter horse has made my life pure hell. My wife, she used to cook for me and serve it up with champagne. Now she'd rather feed that horse and fix his special grain. She rides him every morning and grooves him half the night. The last time that she kissed me was just to be polite. He dresses better than I do with matching wraps and ties. My wardrobe's so neglected now that I attract the flies. One day my wife was shopping, she was down at the mall, and fancied pampered Dandy was just standing in his stall. He looked so smug and sassy that I began to grin. I'd saddle that fat sucker and take him for a spin. I've wondered ever since if the clues I gave he might have misconstrued. For when I climbed aboard that horse, he rightly came unglued. He bucked and spun and snorted fire and threw me through a fence. I saw big stars, and there are 6 teeth I ain't heard from since. My wife came home and saw me just lying in the dirt. She rushed up to her horse and asked him, "Sweetheart, are you hurt?" She'd scratched his nose a little bit, and memory galls me yet. She left me lying in the mud and ran to call the vet. So doesn't that just describe it?
Perfectly.
It's basically what happens when you become a horse husband. Now, if you become a horse husband after, in other words, she's not a horsewoman when you met, that I think that's even worse because you didn't have those warning signs early on. But let's introduce everybody and say hi to everybody. Jeff Wells is the author and veterinarian. He wrote a book called A Veterinarian's Handbook for Horse Husbands, and he has a website called equinehusbands.com. Hi, Jeff. How are you?
I'm good. And yourself?
Good. Now, you're in Colorado, right?
Yep, we're in the foothills of Colorado, just outside of Denver.
Good, cool. And you're a horse husband. You both ride a little bit, I guess.
We both ride a little bit. You bet. You bet. We have a couple of mules right now and a miniature horse.
Well, there's a combination for you.
Yeah.
So you ride the mules, I guess.
We do. We trail ride the mules. They're really good. They're really sure-footed.
You know, mules are becoming very popular in fox hunting now, of all things.
They are.
Yeah,
Yep.
They can jump well and do well. Now, how long have you been a vet?
21 years.
And you've been a large animal, small animal, or both?
You know, when I first started practice, I did kind of a little bit of everything. I've mostly just done equine in the last 10 or 12 years.
Really?
Yep. So lots of experience with equine husbands.
Yeah, I bet. And especially when their wives aren't around.
That is the problem, and that was years ago. Some husbands started to say, you know, you should write a book for us when our wives aren't here, and just kind of joking around. And so I was like, you know what, that's a good idea. So I wrote this book to be kind of a short, some funny stuff, a little bit of information, but basically a leave behind for the wife with the husband when she's not there to kind of help them know what to do if there's a problem.
Now you tell me.
Yeah.
All right, and we have...
I just want to know from you why my vet bill's so high.
Well, lots of overhead.
Jeff has to afford those mules somehow.
That's right. That's right. You got to feed those mules.
And John McGraw is with us. He's the co-founder of Equestrian Life and a horse husband and father. Hi, John.
How are you, Glenn?
I'm good. Hey, we have a very special announcement before we get into your sordid past. Actually, we have sort of made an arrangement, and equestrianlife.com, which is sort of like a Facebook for horse people, has now become the official social networking site for the Horse Radio Network.
Yes, and we're very pleased to announce that partnership. And if you want to hear any of Glenn's shows, you can go to equestrianlife.com/HRN.
That's right.
And you can see any of the past shows and get up to date and make comments about any of the Horse Radio Network shows.
Yeah, it's nice to have you guys there. It's nice to build a community around the shows. We've developed quite a listenership for all the shows in the past 6 months since we started, and we have thousands of people downloading the shows now. So there's actually thousands of people going to be listening to us, believe it or not, talk about our wives, which should be interesting, guys, to see if we're all still married after this is done. So
Exactly. I have, Glenn, this is John McGraw. I have a funny story to tell about that, about how I started actually riding and got into this. About 7 years ago, I went to a horse show with one of my daughters and was sort of criticizing her because she messed up and couldn't remember her course in the jumper course. And she said, "Oh, Dad, you think this is so much, easier than you think?" And I said, "Darling, I think it'll be a lot easier for me to learn how to ride a horse than for you to learn how to pay for it." And as a result, I started riding and have not looked back since. And I love it and try to ride almost every day. And
you actually show now, John?
I show several times a month, and
you guys do jumpers, right?
I do jumpers, Dina does hunters, and the girls do both. So
okay.
That's great.
So we have the classic hunter-jumper family there.
Yeah, we do have the classic hunter-jumper family. At times compete against each other. Dina always laughs at times. I say, I'll go in and ride a hunter every once in a while, and the only thing I'm concerned about is making sure that I beat her, So,
So now I got to ask the question. You brought it up. Have you forgotten the course?
You know what? I have, fortunately enough, in the last 7 years since I started riding, I have never forgotten a course.
So your daughter hasn't had that to hold over your head then?
No, not at all.
Knocking on wood right now, of course.
Well, it's funny, too, because I'm sure Greg has... Well, let's introduce Greg here before we get chatting. Greg Tryon's the husband to an Olympian and one heck of a serious eventer by the name of Amy Tryon. And Amy's just, she's a sweetheart. She was on the show, on our eventing radio show here a couple of weeks ago, and we appreciated that. He has a website at Team Tryon, that's TRYON.com. And, well, Greg, you married into this. She was a serious competitor then.
I always say she had two horses. One was for sale, and the other one wasn't going to do what she wanted, and made some silly comment about wanting to go to the Olympics. And I said, well, yeah, don't we all? And I didn't know she was serious, of course. And
she's been to a couple Olympics, hasn't she?
She has, Athens and the Beijing 2008 in Hong Kong.
And was a gold medalist at one, right?
She was a world champion in part of the world championship team in 2002 in Jerez, the World Equestrian Games. She was a team bronze medalist in Athens. She unfortunately had a hard bounce in Hong Kong, and she was also the individual bronze medalist at the World Equestrian Games in Aachen, Germany in 2006.
So how long have you been married now?
A little over 13 years.
13 years, okay. And you both, one of the other interesting sidelights to your story is you were both firefighters, right?
Correct. Basically, that's still what I do. I'm a battalion chief for a fire department in this area, and which is just east of Seattle. And Amy sort of, after 13 years of being a firefighter in the same department, I sort of said, okay, you're doing 3 full-time jobs. Can we sort of cut back on one? And I made the mistake of not pointing out the one that actually earns money to keep that.
So Amy has quit being a firefighter then?
She has, yes.
Yeah, okay.
She still does some volunteer work for our department, but that's about it.
So, Greg, I do want to spend some time with you here. What's it like to be we know what it's like on a smaller scale, but our wives aren't traveling around the world to compete. What's it like to be a horse husband for a very competitive wife?
My first joke is usually that I've traveled around the world and seen the finest barns, and they all pretty much look alike.
They all smell alike, too, I imagine.
Yes, they do. Except for they get really expensive when you start traveling to go see them for some reason. My wife is somebody that, she's always had this dream. She's worked towards it, and it wasn't sort of a dream to go win medals. It was she just wanted to see if she was good enough to be able to compete at that level. And it's one of those things, how can you say no to a dream, although it has started to ponder and cross my mind over the last few years that, wow, this just keeps going. There isn't a stop to it. But it's an amazing thing. It's one of my favorite experiences is the first time we went to Europe because our horse had a hot nail when he got shoed, so he missed going to Rolex in '99. Karen O'Connor says, hey, I'm sending my horse over to badminton. Why don't you bring him along and you can go to Punchestown in Ireland? Okay. So we get over there, and, it's, of course, Biko, the very famous eventing horse that's this amazingly large, fantastic animal. We get over there, and, the first people I'm meeting are, we haven't seen this horse in a week. The horse is, maintained immaculately. He's happy to see us. He's in good shape. He's going. So somebody that we didn't know who's going to be competing against Amy's been taking care of this horse. We met the world champion, Mark Todd, and world champion Blythe Tate, and it was just like, wow, these are amazing people that said, hey, no problem, come with me, we'll get you over there. And that's kind of the entrance into this eventing life.
Now, do you travel to all the shows with her, or is just as many as you can, or?
It's become the standing joke that I'm now the horse show snob because I only go to 4 stars and above. The local ones, not so much anymore. So I get the grief I get from that.
Yeah, the booze is better at those.
Well, exactly. Except for the bounces are a little bit harder at that level too. But I try to travel as much as possible. And as I say, that Amy's in California for the last week and a half. Getting her horses ready for the spring season here, so I haven't seen her in that long.
So somebody give everybody a clue. She could be gone for a month at a time, right?
Well, a perfect example is when last year getting ready for the Olympics, she left middle of January, traveled to the East Coast, Florida, and stayed with the O'Connors and trained and competed. She came home for about 2 weeks in May, and her and Karen O'Connor flew to England to continue training over there and try to make the Olympic team, which they were finally identified in July that you're going to be on the Olympic team. She made it home in September.
Oh my gosh.
So that's the competitive site right there.
Wow. That's 9 months.
Yes. So if anything happens, there's a whole lot of explaining to do sort of thing, yeah.
I just have a question. How do you pay for all that?
I'm still trying to figure that one out.
Yeah, battalion chiefs don't make that much money.
Yeah, no.
No.
The big thing has been, the wonderful sponsors that we have, which is, mostly in kind. So at least we're not paying for feed, like LMF and the tack she gets. So we sort of reduced that out of the way. The big expenses are literally putting horses on airplanes and flying them over to Europe or whatever. That gets to be a real challenge. And then the wonderful people we have here at the barn who are taking care of the other horses at home. So it's basically, Amy jokes about, it's selling anything that isn't nailed down, and she started practicing that apparently when she was very young with her mother going, okay, where did this picture go? I sold it. That sort of behavior.
Oh, my.
Well, that's how it's interesting because we don't often, well, it's funny because I looked your name up, I Googled you.
Oh, God.
And you know what I found? Everything.
Semen on a...
You own part of one horse, right?
Correct.
And that's all I found.
That's about it. I mean, I introduced myself. Hi, I'm Amy Tryon's husband. So,
yeah.
I mean, that's how the process goes.
I did find one funny picture of you from WAG, from the World Equestrian Games last time. You know which one I'm going to talk about.
Yeah, it's taking my boot off.
Taking your boot off. You couldn't get your boot off. Somebody's trying to pull it off, and the caption said you had to have it cut off.
Yeah, yes. Ultimately, we did. It was Steve Teachman, who is the team farrier for the U.S. equestrian team, or the eventing team, loaned me some boots because we didn't quite expect the amount of rain that we got there. And I was, of course, being the horse husband, unprepared. So he loaned me some boots. Were just a little too small, so off they came by scissors.
Well, you know what picture is going to be on this episode, don't you?
I have no doubt of it. There could be worse ones, so I'll stick with that one.
So what's the toughest part about being a horse husband? Or father, in John's case?
Well, I think from my perspective, I mean, it's actually the reason I got to be riding was going to these shows. And the funny thing I think about riding is that it looks a lot easier when somebody else is doing it than when you have to do it. And when I started riding, I used to, I was far more critical of the girls before I started doing it myself because, when you have really good riders, it looks very easy. And when you have to end up doing it yourself, it's quite difficult actually at times. But
well, it's funny because you talk about being critical of your daughters. That's something that we as boyfriends and then horse husbands learn very quickly. You don't be critical of your wife when she's riding.
No, never.
No.
We all learn that one the hard way, don't we?
Yeah. Oh,
no, but actually I compete against Dean like I said, every once in a while. And my only goal is to make sure that if I ever ride a hunter is to make sure that I beat her. But,
Jeff.
It makes it fun, especially when you have sort of the great thing about the whole equestrian sport is it's irrespective of age and gender and everything like that, and all things are equal, and you all get out there and try to compete, and that makes a lot of fun. But being an older guy like myself, it's hard to beat those younger kids.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I should mention too that most people know a little bit about me from the shows, but I married into it. I was not a horse person at all. I lived in Amish country, and the only thing we did was swear at horses. When the horse and buggies all the time, we had to pass them in our cars. So that's pretty much what I knew about horses, and then married into it, and we ended up with a 25-stall boarding stable, and
oh my God,
that was the end of that. Got into the tack business and been doing the horse thing ever since. So I don't ride, I actually drive. Have driven ponies most of my life and enjoy that. I never got into sitting on them. That's something we didn't ask you, Greg. Do you ride at all?
I do my obligatory annual trail ride, and my other side of it is I can identify that it's a horse 9 times out of 10. So.
All right, so you know which end's the tail anyway.
Correct.
So, Jeff, tell us, what do you find in your travels as a veterinarian? Are most horse husbands into it, or are most of them just rolling their eyes most of the time? Or
I was thinking of kind of the classic example as everybody was talking there. The thing that always kills me, and you see this happening and starting to develop, is that, the wife decides that, it's her life dream to have a horse, and then you have the horse, or the daughter gets the horse, and then they get kind of, maybe they get a used, modest trailer, and they get started. Well, all of a sudden, it all develops. And now that horse isn't quite up to what the daughter or the wife is, really able to do. And they need that fancier horse to go to the next level. And then that comes with a fancier trailer. And then that comes with maybe a more well-known trainer. And the whole thing just spirals out of control. But all I can think is, as I hear you guys talking about, is like, I'm sure you've been down that exact road. So
I think we all have.
yeah. But and you just see it get started, and you just think, oh, this guy has no idea what he's in for, and I know exactly what he's in for.
So, what's one of the worst or funniest? I don't know what to ask you. What's one of the situations where the horse husband was there and the wife wasn't, and it was just a total disaster in the making?
You get a lot of them where often the wives and daughters have a whole different opinion of, like, what is a severe illness or injury. A little scratch may be a severe thing to them, and the husband is like, oh, that's no big deal. I'll wait. We don't need to call the vet.
Yeah, because we're thinking about the bill. We have one thing in mind, the bill.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And it's always after hours, so that's more expensive. Right. But I think a common one is where where the wife gets home and just has a fit because the veterinarian get called, and there's some tiny little scratch that you have to kind of find or ask where it's at to be able to find it when you get there as a veterinarian. But one of my favorites though was a lady who I've known for a long, long time, and she went off with her girlfriends for the weekend, and the husband had a bunch of, for some reason, she'd been making apple pies or something, and it had a bunch of apple rinds. And so the husband's looking at this bucket of apple rinds, and he's like, well, I'll feed that to the horse. And, of course, colic and, a couple of bills later, he's in big trouble. He was pretty much sleeping in the barn at that point. and often, the wife would just as soon bring the horse in and put the husband in the barn. So, I'm sure you guys have been down that road. Yeah.
I've never actually had to sleep in the barn, though. I can't say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, being one that has to pay those vet bills, I'm always like, he'll be fine, or she'll be fine in a couple of days,
Yeah, they'll get over it.
Yeah, that never really flies. I have another husband who, whenever I call, she calls me, and then I call back, and I talk to him, and he's like, well, I think it's doing a lot better. It doesn't seem that lame anymore and stuff. And you hear her yelling in the background, and then she takes over the phone. And, of course, it's not better, and you need to come out immediately. And just a whole different outlook, a whole different interpretation of how bad things are.
Well, I do have a general question for you, because you've been doing this a long time. And this is something I think every horse husband wants to know. Are women getting worse about wanting to call the vet for every little thing? Is that changed over the years?
Can you promise me that no clients are listening to this show?
I guarantee that nobody from Colorado listens.
Right. I think that I don't know if it's worse.
Oh, he's hedging this one big time.
Yeah, and I'm dodging the question. Probably. I think that there's so much awareness about everything that's here's the problem. It's the internet. Is that people, 9 times out of 10, by the time you show up to treat whatever problem it is, they've been on the internet.
And they've already diagnosed it.
Oh, yeah. And they're sure that it's going to die because the internet completely alarms people.
Right.
It goes through this whole scenario, and then, it's going to die. So you get out there for something that is actually often, not that big of a deal and fairly easily handleable. And they're crying. They're sure that it's going to die, and it's the internet. I totally blame the internet for getting people out there. Yeah.
No, I'm just the opposite. I'm like, do we have to call the vet?
Yeah.
I'm sure he'll be fine in a couple days, or a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Now, Greg, you can't get away with that, though, because you're dealing with Olympic-level horses. You're calling the vet.
That's exactly. And actually, my wife has gotten so good at it, she's convinced me that we have to fly the farrier in because it's cheaper to pay a good farrier to do the horse than it is the vet, which she's absolutely correct.
Oh, no, wait a minute. You actually fly on an airplane?
Yeah, we do. It's one of those that the shoeing of these horses has gotten to be such an art and science. I mean, literally, Nike is making shoes for horses now. So it's the ability to understand what the sport is, understand horses, and then understand the specific horse. The team farrier for the United States equestrian team is an artist. He's not just a technician in his job. He's truly an artist, and he's trained through sort of a journeyman process a number of vets around the country. And one of the guys, he's now moved east to be with the girl of his dreams, so we have to fly him back home about every 5 weeks because
I'm not even going to ask what that bill is.
Yeah, it's shared amongst of horses. Yeah, I can speak English here well. But it's ultimately it is cheaper because once you try to start diagnosing lameness and everything else, it's like, you got 5 people standing there. Well, I see it in that leg. Well, no, I see it in that. And so the time just starts adding up quickly. So it's cheaper in the long run.
You better be painting murals on the horse's hooves for.
Oh my God, I tell you, it's a racket.
All right, what I have here, guys, this will guide our conversation for the remainder of the show. I have the 10 most common things that irritate horse husbands about horse wives. Now, I actually put this list together, and my wife helped me. So, because we were in the tack business for a long time, we saw a lot of things. We saw it. You see it from Jeff from the vet side. We saw it from the tack side, from having a store. So, we got to see some interesting things too. So number 1 on the list I have, and we can discuss these as we go, is the biggest has to be that they keep the barn spotless and could care less about the house. My wife's a classic at that. She could care less if the house became a total pigsty. The barn is spotless, but the house never gets any attention at all. So I learned very quickly if the house was going to get cleaned, I had to do it. Am I alone in this one?
My wife is too much obsessive compulsive on that one. The girls in the barn actually for the annual Christmas present for her is get her a broom and it's not for flying, it is solely for sweeping. So she's heavy on that. Mind you, how she cleans things is if it's out of sight, it's clean. Doesn't mean that it's actually organized or anything. It's just out of sight.
Mm-hmm. Well, the joke of the equine practitioners groups is always the trailer house beside the immaculate monster barn. So they just don't care where they live. Yep.
That's right. It is true. So we can all agree that that's pretty much a good generalization. Oh, and the cars are always usually that way, too.
Oh, yeah.
Horsewomen's cars, I got to say, they need to do better on that one.
I don't understand is why my clothes get destroyed, but all the horse stuff, all the competition clothing is immaculately kept. It's taken to the dry cleaners, but my stuff is, don't worry, the horse is chewing on it. It's not a big deal. He likes it.
Hey. Yes, I couldn't agree with that more. The car situation is an absolutely nightmare in our house. I mean, between the dogs, the horse stuff, and everything else, there is, our cars, if the Department of Health came over, we'd be certainly arrested.
Well, and it's funny, when you go to a horse show, if you look at the cars, and I'm not generalizing this. If you look at the cars, 8 out of 10 are just completely filled with junk. And most of it, there are more breeches and, shirts and wraps and saddle pads.
Bridles
and they're all just in there in a heap.
Yes. And I have to think I'm not the only one that on this call that has the dogs that include and all that stuff.
Oh, you're not.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because they're usually going to the horse show.
Right.
Yeah.
They're the children.
Yeah, usually a Jack Russell. Yeah.
Right, yeah. We had the Jack Russells, too, so.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
All right, so the second one I have on the list is feed the horses on time every day with the best grain and supplements costing hundreds of dollars and lucky if they can cook a can of soup. Now, I have to give my wife credit. She has learned to cook meatloaf. She does great meatloaf. So whenever there's meatloaf to be cooked, she does it. Now, I like to cook, so that helps. I mean, I do like to cook. But
Glenn, I'm with you. I like to cook, too, so we're okay there. But in a pinch, our local grocery store has a great deli.
So
do Olympic eventers cook?
Frozen peas in the microwave. That's the status. Thankfully, I like to cook, and so the kitchen is my space in that regards. But God bless, my mother-in-law could have at least taught her how to cook. But then again, I've also had my mother-in-law cook, so I understand where it came from.
There we
I'm going to be in trouble now.
We just made the mother-in-law mad there.
Yeah, there we go.
That might be worse than the wife.
Yes.
Jeff, you're being awful quiet on this one. Tell us that your wife is a great cook.
My wife is a great cook. She may not be as serious of a horsewoman as the rest of yours. So, no, she's a very good cook. And my mother-in-law's a good cook, too. So
he's just saying that to annoy us.
Well, she's a little less serious in the horse riding arena probably than everybody else. So that probably helps a little bit. Yeah.
Well, it's good we all like to cook. Do you think we learned to like to cook because we had a necessity, or did you guys like to cook beforehand?
And mine was my mom. She taught me that. So
yeah, mine was too, actually.
And mine too. I've always enjoyed cooking. So
all right, so we'll leave that one go because we like it, so we can't really complain about it too much. Matter of fact, we'd probably rather not have them in the kitchen. So.
True.
Yeah. All right, now the third one is something that if there's any horse husbands actually listening to this show, which we'll see if the wives let them, there's something you learn when you're a retailer in the horse world, and that is a good 60 to 70% of women in the horse world have secret credit cards their husbands don't know about. And that's for shopping at the tax shops. Now, you might think I'm kidding, but that is the honest-to-God truth. And they'll tell us that when they're checking out.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, so there you guys go. You can be checking out the secret credit cards.
Well, I wish it was secret, because then I wouldn't know about it. That would be helpful to me.
The thing
I have to admit, since I ride, I'm probably as bad as Dina when it comes to that. So.
So you don't even have to have secret ones. You just
no.
Yeah.
I'm actually probably worse than she is. She's like, "Why did you buy a new bridle? The bridle was fine, and so."
Well, there's one I don't even have written down. It goes along with the credit card thing. Is that we also usually end up doing the paying the bills and stuff too.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's your case, Greg, too.
Very much so. One, she has to be home to pay the bills, but the other one is that it just sort of it happens magically. I know when I'm gone, the bills get paid, so it must be fine.
Well, as a veterinarian, it always amazes me of the amount of supplements that some horses get. It's just between the horse magazines and the internet, there's so many things that women are convinced they need to get for these horses. And over the years, I've done some work for some of the local horse rescues in the area, and we've actually seen horses that had developed problems from having too many supplements.
Oh, I believe that.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I worked for a very large company that sold supplements, and I believe that. I believe that we are. I think, as a general rule, we're over supplementing our horses at this point.
Oh yeah.
I'm glad to hear a veterinarian actually say it.
Yeah, well, I remember a specific horse that was actually laying down extra bone in his foot because he was getting. And we went through the supplement thing, and it was like, oh my gosh, it's just completely messed up because there was just so much.
And from my perspective, I mean, we give our horses more vitamins than we give our kids. So I
the priority list.
Sometimes wonder about all that,
Smart Pack has been
and my kids are a lot less lame than my horses.
That's a good line, actually. I like that. Of course, the fourth one I have on the list is absent most evenings and all weekends. I think we can pretty much say that's true. And, Greg, we're not even going to talk about that one because you just have us all just way beyond.
I was going to add months to that, not just the weeks and weekends.
I think I don't feel bad about it anymore.
Marriage therapy helps. It's a big difference, so I can tell you that much.
You must go separately.
Well, by phone works just as well sometimes, so probably a little safer too.
I wonder too, and I never even thought about this till you brought it up. Maybe traveling in those circles, is divorce a problem with that level of rider any more than anybody else?
Well, I can't speak for anybody else, but I do know it was pretty interesting coming back when Amy went to her first Olympics in Athens, and the riders all got together like 2 months later in Washington, D.C. to go meet the president with the rest of the Olympic team, and they get there and they're sort of sitting like after the event, and they're just sort of talking, and it just sort of comes out, and the stress of the competition they sort of all realized had put so much stress on their personal relationships because they'd been so focused for the last 6 months on this that they were like, what, you're having challenges too? And well, yeah, and so it sort of just opened up, and there was kind of like this sigh of relief and like, oh wow, okay, it isn't just me. And they started talking about the things they could do to make it better. So clearly being gone, if you haven't learned how to talk, that's a problem. And I imagine that any level of competition where you're so focused, as Amy says, it's the most narcissistic thing that I do is compete at this level. And there's some validity to that, and some things I've had to learn how to talk, and some things just to let roll off my back, and it's okay.
Right. I can appreciate that. It's they're addicted to horses anyway.
Yep.
So just taking it to that next level, that super level, I can just imagine.
Commonly known as obsessive compulsive disorder, I think, but I'm not a psychologist, so.
I think we should add equine in the front of that. Equine,
yeah, there you go. Perfect.
Disorder. We just invented a new one.
There we go.
That's a new book, Jeff.
Yeah. I was remembering the last time I was on your show, there were two women on with me.
Yes.
And they really hit me up about the horse divorce. Is that more of a common thing? And I really had to skirt the issue. They were ready to go.
Yeah. All right, number 5, horse laundry in the washer with horsehair everywhere. That one gets to me. When she puts the horse blankets in the washing machine and then I wash the next batch of clothes and they're covered in horsehair, that one gets to me for some reason.
You don't want a suit job.
No, exactly. I don't know. Am I the only one that gets bugged by that?
Oh, no. We had to buy separate washers and dryers for the barn just because of that problem. And again, that goes with the horse stuff gets treated a little better than the personal laundry does, which is a little annoying.
Yeah, we've agreed on the same thing. We have separate washers and dryers at the barn as opposed to the house.
Yes.
Yeah, but it still seems that the saddle pads sneak into the house washing machine.
I have a little different situation as a veterinarian. My wife actually complains about me because you open up the dryer and like needles from my pocket have gone everywhere.
Yeah.
So it's a little different situation. Yeah.
Been there too. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and one I don't have on the list, but that just reminded me, is how many saddle pads does a person need? It seems like they collect saddle pads. Saddle pads seem to be the boon, the thing that they just hold on to. You just end up with tons of them. And you, Greg, you're giving them they're giving saddle pads all the time, so you have like tons of them.
Absolutely, and of course, plug sponsors away, but Fleeceworks does a wonderful job of keeping her in these things, but she goes through them left and right, and it's sort of the things she gives away, and the funny part is it's like a gift of gold to some people. It's you could have given them a horse, they were like, yeah, okay, but I want the saddle pad, and you run into them constantly.
Well, the next one on the list is we'll get more serious here, and then we'll go back to Goofy. And this one I had to deal with too because Greg, my wife, was a lower level eventer when I met her and was for a long time after that. She was a pony clubber and all that stuff. Is watching cross country and broken bones. My wife has broken almost every bone in her body at least once and some several times. So, I have a funny story about that. It's funny because, we hear about people falling off, and you talked about your wife bouncing, and I know, John, your wife told me that she just took a bad spill.
Right.
But we always usually get hurt on the ground more than we do when riding, as horse people. One day I went off to work, and I came back from work, and she had a cast on her arm. And I said, well, what the heck happened? And she said, well, I was leading your pony out to the field, and the dog spooked. And this is a little 12-hand pony or 12, 13-hand pony. Dog spooked the pony. Pony spooked, ran into her. She fell over, and she put her hand out, broke her arm. She finished doing the barn, drove herself to the hospital, got it set, got the cast on, came home, never called me. I came home, there was the cast. So they get so used to it. Do you ever get used to watching your wife do cross country? Or in your case, John, do stadium courses?
Well, Dina got hurt last Saturday or Sunday. We were riding together, and the horse spooked, and she fell off, and we're off to the emergency room. It's sort of a regular occurrence at the house here. So, I don't know if you get used to it, or it's just sort of part of your daily life.
For me, it's, I've gotten to the point of this is something she loves to do, so, we should all be so happy if something serious happens that you're doing what you love to do. At the same time, it's a bit of a challenge, especially what happens afterwards, because it starts to affect your life with back injuries and knee injuries and all that other stuff. It starts to add up, and you wonder what toll it's going to have down the road here.
Well, and the other way it affects horse husbands is if you're in a situation like we were, where we had a big, a fairly large farm. We had about 20, 25 horses there. Guess who ends up cleaning the barn and doing the feedings? Now, I gotta give her credit, Jennifer credit, though. Even with broken bones, she was out there the next day in the barn. That's the way it is.
Oh, yeah.
That's the only prenuptial my wife and I have is I don't do stalls.
Oh, really?
Yes.
That's a good prenuptial.
God bless her, she's kept to it, so I can't complain too much.
No, you can't complain about that one. That is one of the things that I didn't look forward to, because I had seen her broken a few times, and we've seen students fall off and all of that kind of thing, and it's not something that any of us looks forward to. But they ride, and stuff happens.
And big animal, it's going to happen.
Exactly, and my dear wife is not the best of patients. That's where I kind of look less fondly towards the injuries. Is okay, the initial injury, we'll get to that. It's the recovery period, because she's not a pleasant patient, unfortunately.
You just let me in. Go ahead.
I experienced the same thing. Dina fell off this week on Valentine's, and we were in the emergency room.
Oh, on Valentine's Day?
Oh, God.
Yeah,
there you
go. And, now we've examined the injury numerous times, and, at least she was doing something she loved.
And they got you off the hook for Valentine's Day.
Exactly. I saved $50 on dinner that night, right?
Yeah. I have on the number 7 on the list. Won't go to the doctor for herself, but will call the vet in the blink of an eye.
No, absolutely.
100%.
Oh, geez. I cannot get her to go to the doctor.
Yeah.
She could be dying. She won't go to the doctor, but if her horse looked half that bad, she would have called 10 days ago.
Yes.
No, I said this earlier. I think we should just have the vet live with us. It's cheaper, and
I want to send
her
her
a room,
to
and every time the horse looked like he was unsound, or one of the horses, we could,
Jeff's wife would probably like to have him live with one of the clients at times.
Yeah, sometimes. I was just going to say, there's so many times when you show up to take care of the horse, and usually the wife is injured, and the horse may not be that big of a deal, but you spend half your time encouraging her that she does need to go to the doctor, and she needs to call her husband and let him know what's going on.
As the bone is sticking out of her arm, and
exactly.
Yes.
They are tough, though. We got to give our horse wives credit. They are tough cookies.
Extremely.
Oh, they definitely are.
I have to laugh about that. I say I've become much more of a, I studied finance in college, but I've become much more of interested in medicine since the horses. I inject them. I do all these things. I give them the Legend and Adequan, and I know much more about medicine than I ever thought I would have known when I went to college.
Or ever wanted to know.
Or way more than I ever wanted to know. Yes.
All right. We got 3 more to cover here. Isn't it amazing how all the bath towels seem to have suspicious slobber stains on them? There's all those horse towels in the barn, and I don't know if you guys have run into this. When you run a smaller operation, for some reason, the the towels seem to always come in with suspicious stains on them, and end up back in the bathroom.
I absolutely agree with that. I don't know if it's from the dogs, the kids, the horses.
I'm in the opposite situation. I'm always bringing a towel. My wife's like, "Where's that towel?" And I've always used it for some call, bringing it in from the truck, and that doesn't go over well at all.
No, probably doesn't. especially the things you get into.
Yeah, exactly.
John, do you board or do you have horses at home?
We actually own a farm, and then we actually have some of our horses at a boarding stable. So we have both. So
you'll appreciate the next one, and that is Christmas morning. The horses have to be fed before any gifts are opened.
Oh, absolutely.
What do the kids think of that?
Well, I'm usually trying to rouse the teenagers out of bed to help.
Yeah.
It's they love to ride them, but actually taking care of them—that's a whole different story.
Right. Right.
Well, that's the one day that the barn help gets off. So, Amy's working the barn, so I'm usually I've decided I just go to work at the fire station and call it good.
Yeah, you always want to make sure you're working on a Monday, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And that's usually an inventor's day off, isn't it, Monday?
They have days off? I haven't figured that one out yet.
There you go. That was a dumb statement. Sorry about that.
My silly thing is, I'm just going to go groom the horse. Oh, great. Okay, I'm expecting 15, 20 minutes later, and it's 2-3 hours later. That's my challenge. So.
Well, there's the next. That's the next one I had. You're good. That's the next one I had in line. Is they never leave on time for any function. You cannot get them to be out on time. That's frustrating.
That is a constant hassle in our household about. Well, I had to feed the horses. I have to take care of the horses.
Yeah, and you're late for the function.
Yes.
And then I'm made late because the horsewomen are late, and they call me at the last minute right before something comes up. It's always like right when you're on your way to the airport or right when you're onto a dinner party. So
how do you ever have a life, Jeff?
It's tough. I've always worked with one other person, so literally for 21 years I've been on call every other weekend, every other night, and that does wear a little bit. My wife gets a little aggravated with that.
Yeah, like right now I'm surprised that you haven't been called out in the hour we've been on.
Yeah, I'm not on call tonight.
Well, that's good. All right, before we get to the last one, which I think is a classic for all of us horse husbands, I wanted to mention we wanted to thank one of our sponsors, The Barn Works. If you need print advertisement for your local trade magazine, or how about the omnibus if you're an eventer, if you want tastefully designed graphics that represent the professionalism of your business, we suggest you contact The Barn Works. They're good people over there. It's a small marketing firm that knows design, horses, and how to put them together and bring new business to your front door. The design team at The Barn Works works hard to listen to your needs and deliver graphics, logos, web designs that are timely, contemporary, and elegant. For a preview of their work, visit thebarnworks.com. Not only do they deliver quality service, but they can do it on whatever budget you have to work with. So, as I said, they're good folks over there. We like working with them. We've had them do some of our artwork, and they actually did our logo for the Stable Scoop Show, which everybody seems to like. So that's The Barn Works, marketing services for equestrians like you. 978-468-5167. That's 978-468-5167 or thebarnworks.com. Okay, guys, the last one for this show is that all gifts for any occasion must come from a tack shop, or we get that "Are you serious?" look. How many times have we made that mistake, trying to buy him jewelry or trying to do something that we thought was extra special, and you know darn well they would have rather had something from the tack shop?
Well, we're fortunate enough that we have a jeweler that goes to all the horse shows, so I can kind of get 2 bangs for my buck.
Right. But my wife does not wear jewelry that much. I think, because...
Glenn, you are lucky.
I know. I think I am lucky on that one. She would rather have, a new pair of riding boots than jewelry. That's for sure.
My dearest has gone through 2 wedding rings, so, she's a little hard on jewelry, so I think I've stopped buying the jewelry stuff just because of that.
Yeah, that's usually the horsewoman thing. They're afraid that they're going to lose it or get caught up in it.
Yeah, so right, exactly.
Often they're not into it.
And often they do.
Yeah.
I would actually prefer that she didn't wear her diamond engagement ring to the barn, That was always a preference of mine. But, when I owned a tack shop, I was grateful for that. I was really grateful for the fact that that all the gifts had to come from the tack shop.
I bet. Right off, you got to test out the equipment and stuff. So.
All right, guys. Well, we've spent, believe it or not, almost 50 minutes on this subject. And I do appreciate you all being on. I wanted to tell everybody, hang on here one second. I wanted to remind everybody that next week the wives get to take their revenge on us. I don't think Amy's going to be on. I think she's down competing, but I do know that John's wife's going to be on. So
Good luck.
My wife will be on, unfortunately. So they get their revenge next week. We also wanted to mention two of the other shows we do on the Horse Radio Network, the Eventing Radio Show. It's we actually this week did a show on with Rusty Lowe, who is the safety coordinator for Rolex, and Dr. Catherine Cohn, who we hope is someone that that Amy Tryon doesn't visit at Rolex. She's the chief veterinarian.
She's an amazing vet.
Yes, and we hope that she doesn't have to run into Rusty or Catherine at all at the show. That would be a good day, right?
Yeah.
Are you coming out this year to Rolex?
Yes.
Okay, good. Well, hopefully we'll see you there. We'll be doing daily shows from there, actually, for the eventing show. So we'll get you on. We'll have the horse husband perspective. So that's on eventingradio.com. You can check that out. It was an interesting conversation with both of them. And then the 2010 radio show, all about the World Equestrian Games, we took a look at the sport of para-equestrian, and we had somebody that the Tryons also probably know. We had Missy Ronshausen on. She is an eventer, but also the U.S. team coach for the U.S. para-equestrian team. So she spent some time talking to us about that. So you can visit our show notes and see all the links for today's show. And we also wanted to mention, go over to equestrianlife.com, our new partner and our new social network. Sign up at Equestrian Life. It's like Facebook, only it's for horse people. It's got lots of cool stuff that Facebook doesn't have for horse people. So check that out at equestrianlife.com. See, I got the plug in there.
Thank you, Glenn. We appreciate that.
No problem. And you can give us feedback. Just stop over to our website at stablescoop.com. Hit the contact at the button at the top. We'd love to hear feedback from the horse husbands out there. Where we right, where we wrong, what we miss. We do not want to hear from the wives, so don't bother. We just don't want to hear. And we want to also thank our sponsors at the Barn Works. Well, guys, it's been fun.
Thank you.
We should make this an annual event.
Sure.
Sort of like a reunion. That is, if we survive this one.
Yes. Got to work through the 12 steps and all.
Right, exactly. Well, Jeff, you keep doing your vet thing out there in Colorado. You live in a beautiful part of the country.
Yeah, it's a nice spot.
You're right outside. You're in the hills right outside of Denver, right?
Right, exactly.
Well, that's wonderful. And, John, I know you live in Paradise over there near San Fran.
Yeah, in Northern California, it's beautiful out here now. We've stopped the rain, so it's gorgeous.
Well, great. We appreciate you being on. And, Greg, it was neat to get the perspective of a professional horse husband who lives up in the great Northwest in the middle of Rain Central. I'm not quite sure why, but...
Because it's beautiful. It really is.
Hey, and I also wanted to say, on the behalf of all of us, we thank you for what you do for your real job.
I appreciate that. It's very kind of you.
Yeah, we appreciate you being a firefighter and being out there really risking your life. I have one more question for you, Greg. Was it more dangerous for her being a firefighter or riding an event horse?
I would say riding an event horse, because with being a firefighter, you get to control a few more things versus being with a horse. It's a live animal, and it can have its opinions at inopportune times. So
right. Well, when she was doing both, that was like the double.
Yeah, pretty much. You were testing fate a little. So.
All right, guys. Well, next week we get to hear our wives whine about us. So we'll see y'all. Appreciate you being on.